Thank you so much for making the time to chat today and to share some of your insights. I've been such an admirer of your work from Microinteractions as well as your Medium blog, and it's really great to have someone to look up to in the design space and to really practice some of those principles. I read a little bit about your journey from the humanities to then design, and I was curious about that pivot and kind of how that's translated to your perspective of design today.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I my background for those who don't know, I did my undergrad in English literature and theater, and I guess how I kind of got into design was I went to work for a book publisher, and that was kind of when the rise of the web came up, and I just kind of happened to be at the right place at the right time and got lucky and started to work on their website, and I guess that started to translate more and more into design and starting to do design, although I didn't really think about it as design at that point. And then eventually I went to school and got my master's degree in design because I was like, well, there's a lot that I don't know about things like typography and things like layout and things like cognition and all these different things. And I do think that my background in humanities sometimes is different than a lot of very classically trained designers just because they think so much in visuals, and often I try to think in words or narratives. Sometimes I'm always kind of like, what's the story? Tell me the story. What's the use case here? And so I tend to think a little bit more in words, which I guess is why I do a lot of writing about design because that's just how I think about it. And so I'm like, oh, well, if I can write it clearly, then I can actually start to make use of it or understand what I'm doing. So there's kind of a lot of back and forth of doing things, writing things, and thinking about things kind of in my practice. So, and now it's super helpful when I go to actually try to tell students how to do some of this stuff, because it's like, well, I need to put those words on the slides and then explain them and do exercises around them. So that's kind of been my journey through, from humanities to design.
Incredible. And do you see that transition applying to kind of new technologies like when we think about AI or some of the large language models that we're seeing?
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that, but yes, we we move. I mean, I got started in the the graphical user interface era, and now we've regressed back to the command line era once again. And so, yeah, I mean, some of the work that I'm doing now with some students is kind of about structured text and how you remember things, and how do you have a conversation and go back and remember what you said, and can you repeat it, and those kinds of things, which is funny. Although, I mean, the more I think about it, the more, I have been trained by people who call themselves rhetoric professors, people like Dick Buchanan, who come out of a thing of like, they're rhetoricians, I guess is the name for them. And I also had that in my undergrad too. And so it's strange to be back, yeah, working with words again. Although I'm really, really, I maybe because I understand how hard it is for a lot of people to make words. And I know that I personally, it's hard I'm just a slow writer. And so I know that it's hard sometimes to find that right word. So I am trying to push us away from the big text box as much as possible right now.
That makes sense. And I think so much of language changes with culture and with our interfaces that we're seeing even now. It's really important.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what we are experiencing with these LLMs is completely English language based. It's so completely Western based. It is just, and so those kind of hidden biases that are in our language and is particularly in English is just carried is carried into the system. And so, yeah, there's a lot to really think about there and unpack as you start to work with it. And you're like, is this really right? So yeah, it's an interesting time to be working with a technology that is very text based.
That's true. And are there any kind of principles or reference points that you've got to help you kind of make sense of that and approach that relationship with a certain sense of transparency or ethicality?
Let me think about that. There are definitely there is definitely, I think, a healthy skepticism that you have to approach every AI system simply because they are probabilistic, not deterministic systems. And I think you have to, I mean, I guess when I think about AI, so much of what I am thinking about and doing is designing for when that AI fails, for when it makes this wrong guess, for when it does something weird, for when it for when the biases surface. Like, what can you do about that? How do you flag that? How do you send it back and be like, hey, this is not right? How do you even detect sometimes when it is completely hallucinating and not giving you the answer that you want because you're like, wait a minute, this is not right. And that's with things that I know, much less things that I don't know that I'm asking it. So I do think there is a lot in how I'm approaching working with AI that is all about detecting errors and failure and those kinds of things, just because I know how well I just know that AI will present itself as being extremely confident in its answers, even when it's completely out of its depth and doesn't know the thing. So I guess that's kind of how I think about that's kind of a big guiding principle for me. And I guess the other one is, you know, this is a this is a psych podcast. I think a lot about the cognitive load that's on people. Right now, I'm doing a lot of thinking kind of around the blank state effect, or the blank canvas effect, where people get to these things and they cannot form a mental model of how it works or what that it can do or the limitations of it, and trying to figure out how do we provide more visual cues for people to understand the system works. Not as like how the AI works, but like what the system can do so that I can figure out what I can do with it. Oh, I didn't even know that. Like, sometimes right now, I mean, even for me, and I read about this stuff every day, and I'm ostensibly a professor at the one of the best AI schools in the world. And even I'm like, I wonder if it can do this. And I have no idea. Like, sometimes I just ask, can you do this? And sometimes the answer is surprisingly no for basic things. The other day, I went to Google and had it make something for me. And then it exported it to the Google Doc. And then I said, well, help me format this and fit it onto one page. And it's like, well, I can't do that. It's like, what do you mean you can't do that? That's basic. Like, just being able to, like, it's much harder, you would think, to come up with a summary of these big documents rather than to fit them rather than just to format it. But formatting it apparently is harder than a summary, which is kind of counterintuitive.
That's true. And that's really fascinating that actually it's really about those micro moments and the subtle changes, like you've mentioned in previous talks as well, that make the
Yeah,
biggest.
the micro interactions for AI are definitely shifting. There's a lot more about things like overseeing and directing and correcting, watching the process, approving processes. So there's all these little things that in the past we were much more concerned about creating tools that were really efficient and did things very well. And now it's more about, like, we're crafting these apprentices that go do things, and we have to kind of keep an eye on what they're doing and be like, not that, not that. So it's kind of a different mindset for sure.
Absolutely. And do you think that kind of translates well to, say, creativity and some of these more metacognitive skills?
Say more about that. What do you
Yeah, so I guess what I'm alluding to was your talk on kind of creative practice and practicality in creative practice. And I'm
Mm.
wondering how, in this era of AI and automation and kind of instant tasks, so to speak, how that translates to kind of being more in touch with ourselves and
Yeah,
building practice.
yeah. Well, I think that talk was all about, yeah, how do we basically recharge our batteries so that we can be creative? How do we start to start to think about things or absorb more things? And I definitely think that that all is still true because now a lot of what the AI will present us as a default is mostly fairly generic, or like unexpectedly weird. So you have to be very, I think like creativity from humans, the weirder that you can get, the more strange and personal and unique you can get, the the less likely it is that AI is going to be able to have come up with the exact same idea. And then the other kind of side of that, and this is the thing that we're trying to teach our students so much about, is discernment, being able to know what's good, being able to look at things and being like, yeah, that's good, versus like that doesn't make sense either for users, or just the flow is bad, or those kinds of things. So, and I think you know, having a wide range of things that you've looked at and thought about, and having the time to pause and really think about things is super important for creativity and super important for when you're dealing with AI. I mean, there's a lot of things now that's all about like, how do you create these kind of cognitive forcing functions to force people to slow down and not accept exactly what the AI is telling them, to really take a look at what is being presented and be like, is that right? Or could this be better? Or is this something that's better phrased? A lot of times people, I mean, will just take that first thing and be like, yeah, that's the thing. And that's not really what AI is great at. If you want something like that, go with a deterministic system. With AI, I mean, you're much better off having the AI give you many options and looking at them and being like, "Oh, that's interesting," or "That is good, but not quite." And so, I think having that level of taste and discernment is going to be really important, because when the production of it is like that, it's I mean, what's left is discernment and taste.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting to think about how we see a lot of kind of mass generated content that's very similar and it becomes kind of harder to stand out, but more valuable to stand out as well.
I just saw a thing yesterday it's a new business that has 5,000 podcasts that are AI generated, they're pumping out like 3,000 episodes a day. And it's like, okay, but what's the quality of that? What's the point of view? Sure, it's going to be fairly generic, but is it I don't know. To me, that seems wild and a human. I mean, certainly there's things that AI could do, like give you a quick summary of the news every day, or, things that require less of a viewpoint, but things that are like, hey, I'm going on a nature walk and here's the AI of a fake nature walk. That just seems, I don't know, that seems flooding the channels with noise, not signal.
Yeah, and at what point do you think that switch occurs essentially? Like, I'm trying to figure out what the boundaries might be between using AI or some of these technologies to supplement or augment our humanity versus kind of replace it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think my feelings about this over the last couple months have changed. I think at first, like a lot of people, I was like kind of more on the like, AI can't make art, AI can't do this, AI can't do this, AI can't, like AI can't write as good as I can. I think kind of that was my sense of it. And I think now that that if I use AI to help me write something and you find that something valuable, I don't see how that's bad from a pure kind of output kind of way, or a pure like AI helping way. I mean, laying aside the significant issue of all the stolen works that make that possible, including my own stolen works, I should say. I think it comes down to like, am I getting value from this? And maybe there are people that, would get value from one of those 3,000 AI slop things. But I would also think like, I mean, there's short-term value and there's long-term value. And there's also the kind of long-term societal value of, as things get more and more generic over time, is like what that does as a society, I think is not great. As is the opposite, which is where things get more and more extreme over time. I mean, I think we're seeing that right now playing out. But I I I think the thing is, yeah, can I use this? It's almost like, I mean, it's in a certain sense, it's like any other technology. Can I use this to create value for people? And if I'm doing that, then great. If I'm doing it to more extract value from you without any kind of exchange between us, then that doesn't feel good to me as a creator and human being. That just seems like they're the same as spam emails. If I'm doing this just to extract money from you, or if I am, rejiggering my social media algorithm to just serve you the worst stuff, like that to me just feels like I'm here to just extract as much value from you as I possibly can and give you very little in exchange. And to me, that just feels, I don't know, that just feels like we've lost our way. Like, the idea behind technology was supposed to be to to help people, to be progress, to help humanity progress, to help us do things that we couldn't otherwise do, not to take advantage of human beings.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to think about how much agency people have and awareness the general public has when it comes to some of these hidden patterns and dark patterns and being able to recognize them.
I mean, almost none, right? I mean, that's the real issue. And how many people listening to these podcasts and stuff have any idea that they're AI generated? I'm I'm still on Facebook, God help me, because some of my friends and family, that's their only platform. The amount of AI tricks that I see that people are falling for, like every day there's a new animal being rescued who has some sob story and some fake video, and I'm just like, you're just I mean, this is easily detectable as AI, and you are just not seeing it at all because it looks so realistic. It's like, this is clearly not happening. What you're seeing right now. So I think there is a huge AI literacy problem that is going to be very difficult to solve because this technology is moving so fast and it is so realistic. I duplicated my voice so that it was easy to make videos and some voiceovers and stuff like that. And it's flawless. It sounds exactly like me. And I'm like, wow, this could be used to make me say literally anything. And when you're talking about public figures, or, I mean, we're just at the era where you won't be able to believe your eyes and ears anymore. It will have to be complete. I don't even know how we're going to do that kind of verification, but it's going to be, it's going to be wild.
Now it is scary to think about that and to see some of the repercussions of that play out today. I was just wondering, in terms of the power that young designers might have in teams that where stakeholders might have sort of competing interests and might not be aligned when it comes to some of these issues, how might, I guess, we as designers be more aware and kind of empowered to speak up about such things?
Yeah, my colleagues talk a lot about this, as that one of the kind of key roles for designers now is going to be less about, it's certainly less production work, but one of the new kind of things that we're going to be doing is a lot of facilitation, a lot of kind of bringing people together. And this is almost traditionally what a product manager would do, this kind of weaving things together. And I think there's a lot of evidence that product and design are just starting to really overlap and kind of have these conversations and have like, what is the direction that we're going to do? What do we value here? What are the trade-offs and consequences if we do these things? I think, are we going after the right thing? And this is why we're seeing an enormous failure rate for AI projects right now, is that people are throwing it at all the wrong kinds of problems, causing a lot of problems for the company, and it's wasting resources, wasting money, all these things. And so that's why this kind of AI fatigue is setting in right now, because people, for 2 years, people have been throwing money at this stuff. It has not been returning value for a lot of people. And yeah, people are growing tired of it. So I think the designer's role is to help try to facilitate this and make sure that, yeah, what we're proposing from an AI project standpoint is it good is it valuable for users, and is it valuable for the organization? Like, should we bother doing this? So I think those are the kinds of questions that designers need to start bringing up if no one else is. I'm not
Yeah,
sure who else would do it. I mean, product managers probably, or I mean, user researchers certainly are a big help in this, understanding, and certainly really good PMs are helping this too. They know what's valuable, or should know what's valuable to customers, to the people who are paying for this. So those are all really important discussions to be having.
if you had to kind of go back and to when you sort of started out in design and self-taught your self-design, would there be any advice you would give yourself in retrospect?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think when I started out, I thought I had to be really good at everything. Like, I had to know everything. I had to be really good at. I had to basically be just this giant full stack designer, and uh, and I was super hard on myself because I wasn't. Like, I just wasn't very good at certain things. And, coding was one of them. I'm a terrible coder. I don't know why. It is just, which is hilarious because I kind of started doing I did like a lot of front end development and stuff like that, but I was just never good at it. It would always take me really long and whatever. But I was really hard on myself. And I think you have to kind of like give in, and also realize that, design is a team sport. You can ask for help. You can partner with people to fill the gaps that you don't have. I think, yeah, I think just be easier on yourself and lean into your strengths, whatever those are. If you're a really great user researcher, who can do, UX, or UX who can do user research, or yeah, I'm a coder, or hey, I'm really good at this. I really know everything there is to know about healthcare, whatever that is, to really lean into that versus trying to be everything to everyone. And of course, hiring managers look for people that like can do everything. But A, you those people are very rare, and B, sometimes, I mean, as a hiring manager, I did this too, where I'm like, hey, I need someone who can do these kinds of things. So positioning yourself to be the person who can do those kinds of things doesn't mean you have to do all of them. You just have to be able to do those kinds of things. And
Okay.
so
Yeah,
that's
that's really great
that
advice.
that's my advice to young designers. Know what you're
And
good at.
yeah, I think it feels like a common thread around kind of being self-critical as designers and scrutinizing every detail. So it's reassuring to hear that. So thank you so much, Dan,
Oh,
for this.
thanks for having me. This has been interesting and enlightening for me too.
I
A lot of things I haven't thought about. So I'm glad we had this discussion.